But the topic that therapists do not want to talk about is money. They do not want to apply their knowledge, their skills to the topic of money. We can talk about addictions, we can talk about abuse, we can talk about sex, we can talk about generalized family dynamics, but to talk about the relationship people have with money doesn't happen in the field of therapy.
Welcome to Knowing Me, Knowing You, the podcast for the future of wealth management. Thanks for being here. I'm Marla Sofer. Money is a tool. It empowers people. Let's dive into how technology is personalizing advice, strengthening connections, and creating lasting impact. If you're an advisor looking to differentiate, a fintech leader shaping the next wave, or a client ready to take control of your financial future, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome to the Knowing Me, Knowing You podcast, the Know Me podcast where we explore the art and science of discovery to build meaningful connections in financial planning. Ed Coambs is the founder of Healthy Love and Money. He's a certified financial therapist, a couples counselor, a financial planner who bridges the gap between money and emotional well-being, especially between people who have deep relationships. His groundbreaking work helps individuals and couples navigate the often overlooked emotional dynamics of financial decision-making, transforming how they approach their financial lives. At Know Me, we believe that understanding your financial identity is a cornerstone of wellness, and Ed's unique expertise highlights how deeply our personal histories, relationships, and mental health impact our financial behaviors. So here we're going to explore Ed's journey, the intersection of love and money, and how cultivating emotional awareness can empower individuals and couples to achieve financial wellness. From practical tools to deeper emotional insights, Ed is here to share wisdom that will transform your relationship with money and with the people that you care about most. Ed, welcome to the Knowing Me, Knowing You podcast.
Marla, thank you. It's such an honor to be here, and I'm so inspired by the work that you're doing to positively impact others' lives.
Thank you. That's amazing. So we always start out with a question, and on a positive note, we ask, what are you excited about in this moment right now?
Oh, I think I continue to come back to this concept of financial intimacy. This concept is not new to me, but it's growing in the marketplace. And it builds on this simple idea of intimacy, which is being known. And we're extending it into our financial life. And because it's so vulnerable to talk about our financial wants, needs, desires, and fears, financial intimacy comes in to help create a safe place for couples to connect with each other. But there's also financial intimacy with ourselves, knowing ourselves, being able to look at what's honestly going on. So that's what lights me up. That's what gets me out of bed every morning, is thinking about how do I spread this message about financial intimacy.
Oh, I love that. And I love that you can find an intimacy with yourself as well. And that comes kind of from just being honest with yourself.
Yeah. And I think it's almost a prerequisite to being financially intimate with another person, right? Many of us feel uncomfortable with our own relationship with money. And so that discomfort with money and our feelings about it transfers right into our other relationships, and our partners and family members pick right up on it. And they feel your anxiety, even if you're not connected to your anxiety about money.
Oh, that's so true. Yeah, I'm thinking of several examples in my own life as you say that.
This work, let's just put it out there for listeners. This work is personal before it's professional.
100%. And we know that it is irrational. Like, as much as we want to have this like very scientific, robotic relationship with money where we make good decisions, science has proven again and again and again, that's just not what humans do.
No, humans are very human. And I think what I've come more and more a fan of is it's only irrational until we understand the psychology behind it. Right? It looks irrational and it gets labeled as irrational. But when we understand the deeper human psychology behind most behaviors, most emotional patterns, most thought patterns, it actually makes sense. We just don't have a coherent lens for making sense out of it. And that's the gift of psychology and therapy, is it helps us better explain what seems irrational on the surface.
Helps us rationalize what's actually happening. That's brilliant. So what inspired you to found Healthy Love and Money? Tell a little bit about how your background as a planner, a therapist, kind of merged these two beautiful sides that came up with, well, here's the problem, guys, and here's the right way to fix it.
Well, the logical answer, Marla, is it started in a firehouse.
Okay.
Wait, did Ed just say firehouse? Yes, I said firehouse. So now I'm actually a therapist, so I would say it actually started in my family. But when I really became aware of what I now call financial intimacy and financial intimacy issues was in the firehouse. I was a young guy. I didn't want to go to college, so I became a firefighter. And so I got to sit around the firehouse listening to guys talk about their wives and money as the primary topics. And let's just say not all the conversations were favorable. And so that just bothered me because I was like, why are they so frustrated? Why are they not telling their wife about their extra side gig money? Why are they so angry? Why are they going through bankruptcy? I just couldn't get my head around any of it as a 19, 20-year-old guy. But I thought there's got to be a way to solve this. And so initially I thought, as many people do when they think about money problems, the way to solve money problems is to learn more about money. And so I started reading all the personal finance books, Susie Orman and Dave Ramsey and David Bach. I mean, this was back in early 2000s. So those are the big names of the day before TikTok and Instagram were a thing. So that was it. But the reality is, to speed this story up, is I learned a lot about money, ultimately left firefighting, got my MBA, got married to a dentist, and she didn't want to do what I thought was the best ideas with money. And that really frustrated me because I'm like, I'm a good guy. I've got all this education. Why won't you do what I'm telling you?
You're listening to Dave Ramsey and Susie Orman.
Yeah. And I had grown up. I had moved beyond them. I worked at Vanguard and learned a lot about mutual fund investing there. And I was reading trade publications called Dental Economics. I'm a money nerd. My wife never read them, but I was reading them. I was like, oh, you buy a dental practice, you buy a building. That's part of how you build the wealth. Okay. That's what we should do. I don't want to do that. No, but the numbers say very clearly this. And this is before emotionally evolving and becoming more mature. And so I hit my head against that metaphorical wall enough times that I went back to school to become a couples therapist to figure out how do people work. Now, this is just my own relationship. I'm seeing things with my mom and dad. I'm seeing things with her folks and her family history. I'm seeing things with my brother. I'm seeing things with my brother-in-law. And I'm like, none of this was talked about in the CFP program. And compound interest does not solve the problem of, I don't trust you, I feel angry with you, you're taking me through a bankruptcy, right? Having the right insurance policy does not solve that problem. Having the right tax strategy does not solve that problem. They're emotional, relational problems. And so I went back to school to become a therapist, naively understanding what they do. And I finally figured out they help people understand relationship dynamics and emotions and navigate them more effectively. But the topic that therapists do not want to talk about is money. They do not want to apply their knowledge, their skills to the topic of money. We can talk about addictions. We can talk about abuse. We can talk about sex. We can talk about generalized family dynamics. But to talk about the relationship people have with money doesn't happen in the field of therapy. And so fortunately, there's a wise group of professionals that formed the Financial Therapy Association. I was fortunate to join in them after just a few years of founding, where they said, financial planners, therapists, academics, we should all be working together. And so it's been an incredible journey the last almost 15 years at this point of integrating ideas from financial planning, ideas from therapy to help couples move forward together financially.
I love that. There's so much there that I could dive into. Starting from, you started as a firefighter. It sounds like you're still a firefighter, just a different one.
Oh, and the fires are hotter now. Trust me, they are. I come out some days at my office. My wife looks at me like, dang, you are singed, dude. I'm like, yeah, I am singed.
I can imagine. And your journey, just starting with listening, you listened as a therapist before you even went down this path of learning about, all the financial details and then therapy. You kind of started from the position of therapy, just as an active listener. And so kind of next topic to maybe dive into is you approached such a challenging topic and you said, look, financial people don't like to talk about emotional relationships with money. They're taught to talk about numbers and policies and transactions. They don't even have the skill. They're never taught at all. That's not part of the CFP or any certification. Yet you have, at least for a long time, it wasn't. And then you have therapists who don't want to talk about money. And so you found this beautiful intersection. And I want to ask you to talk a little bit about therapy-informed financial planning and financial therapy and what those are. And how is this being redefined? You said, let's work together. But what does that mean?
Yeah, so I think that's really important. And this is an ongoing defining process. So when I talk about a therapy-informed financial planning process, what I mean is we don't check the therapy values and knowledge at the door when we're working on developing your financial plan. And in a very functional way, one of the first things that we do, and I was telling you before we hit record, I just had a wonderful financial planner, Mary Lou Daly, join the team. She'd been in wealth management for 15 years. She's like, I'm ready to do something different. She's doing her training in financial therapy at University of Georgia. Fantastic program. And she's like, Ed, how do you do this therapy informed financial planning thing? And I'm kind of like, it's my secret sauce. I just do it. And so like, we're in the process of like teaching her how I do it. And one of the first things that we always do with our couples is we take a family history around money.
Okay.
Because what we know is that the stories lay in the family history around money. And if we can get that to surface and for people to be comfortable to talk about that, knowing they're not going to be shamed or judged or criticized, but they're going to be met with empathy and compassion, it starts them to soften towards their own story around money. And it often starts to set a model in their partner's mind about how they can respond. And so your partner's annoying money behaviors didn't just start in your relationship. They started in their historical past and they served a purpose. There's a great metaphorical story about a woman asking her mom, why do we cut the ends of the ham off every Thanksgiving? And her mom said, well, I don't know. We've just always done it that way. So her mom went to her mom and said, Mom, why did we cut off the ends of the ham? And she said, well, I don't know. I have to go back. And she thought about it. And her great grandmother had a pan that was only this big. And so she had to cut off the ends of the ham to get it to fit. But that became the tradition. But now they had bigger pans, bigger ovens. And so the reality is that same thing happens in our money life. In a more practical money story, I recently heard someone talk about, that their mother's mother grew up in a financially chaotic house, and they were the air quote financially responsible one. And they raised their daughter to be financially responsible and to question every charge and to track everything. Then she gets married, and I'm talking to her husband, and her husband's like, we're on trips. And every time I spend $1 or $10 or $50, there's another dollar out of our budget. Do you think husband is loving this experience on vacation of having his partner track every dollar? No. And they thought they were being helpful, saying, hey, I'm just helping keep track of what's going on. But the husband was feeling the anxiety, right? And so these types of stories are everybody's stories.
They really are. And it's like, this is so interesting. It's like that trauma that it carries down through generations. And what comes to mind for me is when somebody's looking for a planner, they have a problem already. They want to work through something and start taking action with their money. How do you approach when somebody comes and they might not be open to like diving into that therapy part?
So that's a great question. And I think that that's something that we're continuing to learn and figure out. And that really comes back to this therapy informed financial planning piece is people are expecting more traditionally answers. I come with a problem, you give me an answer. And this is the therapy part is my job is not to give you the answer, but to help you grow into your own answer. And that feels frustrating for folks. So we try to find that balance of giving you some solutions right away that you want, but we know that it's in your personal growth and development that you're going to get to more sustainable solutions. But within that therapy informed financial planning, I love it because it's a framework to take people through every major money conversation, right? Financial planning is a process that takes people through all the major aspects of your financial life. We're going to talk about
teaching them to fish.
Yeah. And we're teaching them to fish and let's look at your cash flow and spending. What's going on there? How are you feeling about that? How's your investment and retirement planning going? How are you feeling about that? What do you need? How's your insurance? I had another couple recently talk about, well, wait, why do I have $250,000 in life insurance and you have $1 million? Oh yeah, it was because of this mental health diagnosis. And you just watch the color come out of the face and you're like, oh, there's something still bigger there. So this is about needing life insurance coverage, but also dealing with the reality that this mental health diagnosis may have set a lower limit of what was available. And so we slow down and process and talk about that instead of just passing over it or just being like, oh, well, that's what it is. Okay, check the box, keep on going. Like there's meaning there. There's pain there. There's like, okay, well, what are we going to do in light of this if this person passes away and they have this lowered coverage? Right. So we slow down and so just kind of keep moving on. And we're going to talk about your estate plan and your documents, which brings up all kinds of uncomfortable questions. If you don't have family members that you can help manage your estate process or take care of the kids, if you have young kids and you die, like thinking about that. And for a lot of people, I had another conversation with a different client recently. She said, yeah, well, I expect to die at 60. Why do I need to be too worried about that? Okay. So she looks like a reasonably healthy person in her mid 40s. Like, what gives? And there's story. So we slow down and we go and pull out more stories. So that whole process of asking people about their story from the beginning sets the stage for being able to ask for it at every point, because we know story is going to animate decision making. So in therapy informed financial planning, there is a bit of an assumption that people can move through that and kind of keep going to some degree. But we know that some people have enough pain and enough challenge around money that they really need to spend time in financial therapy. And financial therapy is that safe space to not have to move at any pace and to work on the different emotions, the different thought patterns that show up as they come up. And you have just time to work through it. You're not having to make decisions. In financial planning, we need you to be making decisions and moving along.
So it sounds like a lot of the work is they might come to you and what they're looking for is that behavior change. They want to change their financial patterns. They want to break through some financial barrier. They want to maybe invest better, or they want to save more, or they want to address some challenges that they've had in their whatever their financial behaviors have been.
Right.
And the approach here is we're actually going to start with a level of discovery that's going to understand the deeper meaning and the why behind how you got here in the first place. And it might be so far back. It's rooted in that family history. It's rooted in things that may be uncomfortable to talk about, but what we're addressing here is the root cause. We're not just slapping a Band-Aid on something. We're going to actually improve your overall health and your financial health so you can break through these things again and again and again when they inevitably will come up again and again and again.
100%. I think if you don't get to the root of the psychological issues, it's a bit of a whack-a-mole.
Yeah.
And so, that desire to have the surface level behavioral change of stopping overspending, or, criticizing your partner about what they're doing with their spending, or, being disengaged, there's often layers to that. And sometimes it's hard. We have to work through the layers in time. We can't just drill straight into it. And that's the error that I make sometimes. It's like, I just want to get to the root of it right away. But like, you've built up defenses and protection mechanisms to not feel or know about that root cause issue. And if we expose it too quickly, it can be overwhelming to face that reality.
Right. And then people might shut down and not want to do it again.
And fly away or flood or shut it down or disengage.
Those all sound very technical. Those all sound like terms you learn in the therapy side.
They are all terms that I've learned in the therapy side. And this is where, like, I think even there's so many great, wonderful financial planners out there that want to help people in the change process. But what they don't know, because they haven't gone through that journey of learning about deep change, is just how much technicality there is to it. And it can be just as complex, if not more complex, than developing a deep financial plan.
Do you feel that there is a risk of very well-intended financial planners and coaches who might not have ever been exposed to therapy that could potentially even do harm?
It is a tricky question, and it's one we wrestle with often. I wrestle with personally, and I think as a field, the financial therapists definitely wrestle with this. And I wish that there was a straight answer to this. I think yes and no. I mean, I think in your intention to help someone grow and change without understanding root cause issues may prolong them from getting the help that they need.
Makes sense.
Right. And to some extent, that's part of my experience is like, I got business coaching in my MBA world that was trying to help me grow and mature as a person, but I still had profound anxiety. I couldn't even label it as that. And I had insecurity. And it wasn't until I became a therapist and went on my own healing journey that I realized, like, oh, there's some pretty deep family of origin patterns here that are being replicated. Oh, there was some very early childhood trauma that was dissociated out of my memory. Didn't even know those concepts or possibilities could exist. But those were root core issues for me that I needed to address in therapy. So this is also that tension that we're trying to be aware of in financial therapy is where's that balance between doing deep therapeutic work and psychological healing versus being able to work on like a person's relationship with money. I've gone way deep into the deepest of this.
It makes sense though. What if financial planning wasn't just about numbers, but about you, your values, your goals, your vision for the future? Nomi is transforming client discovery for wealth managers, going beyond assets and risk scores to uncover what truly matters. With behavioral insights and real-time data, Nomi helps advisors personalize advice, build deeper connections, and grow their businesses. Because the best financial decisions start with knowing you. Discover the future of client engagement at nomi.com. So I'm hoping that in our audience, we've got financial professionals and we've got a whole lot of people that are struggling with exactly what you framed out so beautifully. If we could hone in a little bit on what are some practical tools or strategies for both sides, because you need the client to be bought in and to understand the value and the importance of this. And you need the advisor or the financial planner to really recognize, hey, there's something here and there's something deep. I want to help. How can they help in a really accessible way?
So one of the most accessible things, and this is some research I've heard about, I haven't checked out the research myself, so I'm always cautious about this and saying this, but there is growing research that with the increase of podcasts and podcasts specifically done by therapists, people are listening to them that would not traditionally go to therapy, and they're getting therapeutic value.
Oh, that's true for me. I love Esther Perel. I've learned so much about relationships from Esther Perel.
Esther Perel is fantastic, right? And so like you start to learn, and I think the thing I encourage people is to listen to one person for a while and really get their understanding, and then find another person, and then find another person, because ultimately what we're trying to do is triangulate. We're trying to get as close as we can to what's the common theme here between what all these relationship experts are pointing at. They may use different language, but oftentimes we're pointing at very similar things. We may recommend a slightly different approach, but that's okay. Diversity is good. There's diversity in psychological understanding. There certainly are some pretty generally accepted ideas about healthy relationships, and yet there's still some diversity about how to navigate that. And so practically, I think listening to podcasts is a wonderful way to go. I think if you want to be in that deeper level, if you're the professional trying to provide service of change, you need to be on your own journey of internal exploration. How am I wired? Why am I wired the way I am? What experiences, both positive and adverse, have shaped me? And I think this is something where we get really out of balance too, is we can become overly focused on our traumatic past and miss that we've often had some very strengthening experiences as well. Or we can be so focused on, I had a great life, I had all these great coaches, I had all these positive things, that we're turning a blind eye to the fact that we had some really adverse experience that taught us some painful lessons as well that we may be still moving and living out. So we want to look at both sides. I mean, this is a business. A lot of people listening to this are business folks, so they might know the old SWOT analysis, strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats, internal, external, positive, negative. That's what we're talking about.
Super interesting. And those were so accessible. So I love that you shared those two suggestions, like go and learn a little bit, kind of go out there and expose yourself to some of the thinking here that's coming from therapy, and to look inside. So you've been supportive of what Nomi's building, as we are solely focused on discovery, financial discovery, but like really focusing on that what they call the softer side, the emotional relationship with money, your money history, your relationships, what you actually want the money to do for you, getting super crisp and clear on what is the money for exactly, before we start chasing it. And frankly, I talk a lot about, as a culture, we are conditioned to chase money. We are not at all taught or trained about for what. So I'm curious if you wouldn't mind sharing, like, why were you supportive of this concept originally of like, no, there's actually value in helping people go through discovery?
Well, because I've needed it myself, right? And there's a pretty defining moment that I remember in my journey. It's just one that sticks out to me. That I'm sure there's been others, but I was pulling up the driveway of my house. We'd bought this new house. So we'd gone from 1,500 square feet to 3,000 square feet. My wife's dental practice was, she had been associated, then she bought the practice, and then like we were struggling.
She listened to you in the end.
She did in the end listen, and there was peer pressure from other friends. Thankfully, I realized, like, honey, if you ever listen to this, forgive me. But if I ever want you to do something I want you to do, I'd need to back the hell off. I mean, that's the real truth. But I just let you be around your girlfriends and trust that they're going to take you and guide you.
Or she finds it in herself. That maybe
and she finds it in
address
herself.
That own fear and recognize, becoming an entrepreneur would serve her interest.
Well, and this, I'll take a quick side to our listeners on this, is part of the learning that helped me the most with my wife is to understand that she had her own financial history, and that there was very real things that she saw in her life that made her resistant to wanting to start her own business. And so it wasn't a logic problem. It was an emotional experience problem, right? This is that whole, like, you're being irrational. No, she was being very rational based on the fact of some things that she had seen in her life to want to avoid business ownership. And once I understood that, I could be far more compassionate and patient. Now, I also had my own need to build wealth. And this is going to tie right into this, like, kind of awakening story. Is I had the story of, if I have more money or more wealth, then I'll be okay. I'll be accepted, right? Which is not an uncommon association pair that people have. But I'm driving up the driveway to our new house. We've been here, 6 months, whatever it was. And I just had this awareness, like, I'm miserable. I have this successful wife. I have this beautiful house, and I'm miserable. And that was part of the journey inward to figure out, well, what's really going on with me? Because I thought if I just get to this level of success, then I'll be happy. And then I leveled up and got another level of success. And I was like, nope, still not happy. So I guess the answer is it must be a little bit more.
That's right. That's what our culture teaches us.
Yeah. And so that, when we look at it from one angle, can become a compulsive behavior, much like addiction. We can become addicted to chasing success because success is gratifying. in the
What is
short
it
run.
other people's definition of like material success?
And that often is part of the baked in. And so that's part of the knowing yourself is how do you define success for yourself? And the reality is because we're humans and we're cultural beings, it's very hard to get to a clearly defined, this is my own pure definition of success.
You've shared so many answers to this particular question already, but I'm going to ask it again. What is the one instance in your life or a conversation that you had that fundamentally changed your personal relationship with money?
Oh, yeah. I'm going to use something from like the last week.
Okay.
Because this is my relationship with money is not fixed. It's ongoing.
Mm-hmm.
And so healthy love and money is growing. And yet like trying to balance its growth with its revenue is challenging. As any business owner knows, right? And like what you want to accomplish and matching that with the revenue that's available. It's a tough equation. I mean, yes, you can spreadsheet it out.
To the choir here.
Yes, right. And I think a lot of people are listening is like, I'm supposed to dream, I'm supposed to project that we're going to do this. So then I start making decisions to do that, but then the revenue doesn't match coming in. So you can start beating yourself up pretty hard about that. And so I ultimately, as a business owner, had to make some hard decisions about to let a couple of team members go. And what I experienced from the remaining team members in compassion and understanding helped me continue to see like, it's okay to not get this perfect. And because I think a lot of us bring perfectionism also to the process of managing money. And we have that second grader in our brain, first grader in our brain. I've got a couple right now. My youngest boys are first and second grade, literally, right? So they're learning about the right answer in math is 2 + 2 = 4. 4 times 4 = 16. And so we bring that young memory that money and math has a definitive right answer. But when we get to adult money and adult decision-making with the flow of money, if we're managing a business, yes, there is a place where ultimately the numbers can line up, but the numbers are moving so fast that it's very hard to keep it pinned down to like, this is the right answer. And so being able to give ourselves grace and compassion around the dynamic nature of business is something that's so important. So that it was a conversational experience, I guess, after that meeting that just was like, breathe. So I'm noticing how fast I started talking, which just means how anxious I felt sharing all that, but I'm glad to have been able to share it.
Wow. And it was so powerful. I'm so glad you shared it. I think everybody can relate to your story and our relationship with money, our relationship with risk taking, and the importance of compassion and the importance of recognizing, especially in risk taking and business ownership, how broad the kind of decision making landscape is. And there's so many things you have to decide. You have to take some risk and you got to go. And it's sometimes going to have to correct and tweak and move on. I'm so grateful that you shared it. And all the rest of your expertise around the deep connection between love, money, emotional well-being. I want to recap some of what you shared because it was so powerful. So to seek out podcasts from therapists and listen to what expert therapists are saying, especially if you're in the business of other people's money. And for those same people to do some internal work, like look at why are you in the business of money? What is it that got you here in the first place? You know,
like really, why are you here? Not like because, I can make a lot of money. I mean, that's the top level answer, but it's like, and I would challenge them to say, what did you see in your family that was painful around money and what was positive? Pay attention to both sides. Those are drivers. We know this. I know this. I'm sorry to interrupt your beautiful conclusion.
Yeah, no, all good.
Like
a really rich discussion.
This is the thing that blew me up the most in the training to be a therapist is they said, why are you here? In grad school, class 1 of therapy training. And I was like, I'm here to help people. Along with everybody else that was said, we're here to help people. Yeah, but why are you really here? What do you really need from this? And that question is something that I continue to reflect on. And so I would just offer that to people that are listening is, why are you really here? Why are you really doing this? And it's based on your experiences.
Amazing. I took one very, very tangible, tactical, kind of sounded like something you shared just in passing, but it was so powerful to me in the way that I communicate about money. And that is the use of the word irrational, and to be much more sensitive with how I might just be willy-nilly using that word. And I think you're right in a lot of what you said by saying, everyone has this relationship with money. And when we kind of cast with a net or paint with a brush to say you're irrational, you might be doing something that could not be helpful. And so I appreciate that you touched on that, and I took some lessons from it. So it is super clear from our conversation that financial wellness and financial health is not about the numbers. It's about the stories that we tell ourselves, the relationships we build, the experiences we've had.
Can I just soapbox for one more moment?
Go right ahead. Sure.
I feel like this, you're so kind to let me just take a deep breath with empathy, just a different position. But I would say it is about the numbers and about the emotions. This is a trap that I fell into, right? There's a great movement in saying it's not about the numbers, it's about the emotions and the history and all that stuff. That's kind of the common language that we're using right now to get people to focus on this other aspect of it. But the unintended consequences, then we start ignoring the numbers. And when we ignore the numbers, we miss really important, valuable information.
Do you think there's really a risk of that, though? Sorry for cutting you off, because I feel the whole industry since time immemorial has been so focused on the numbers. Do you feel that there are people who are ignoring the numbers? Because I feel like we're kind of just starting to edge in the emotional part, where we're like, if we're looking at, 100% of what a financial planner does, it's been 100% numbers. And now we're kind of eking up to like 2% of the emotional stuff.
So this is what I love about this conversation, and I appreciate a good debate, right? Like I'm learning how to debate, and I'm learning how even to say, like, I have a different opinion. Because like the people pleaser in me doesn't want to say, hey, I have a different opinion. So I welcome this. This is great. But I fully get where you're coming from. And I think that's probably true for Alliance Sweat. I'm on this bleeding edge of people that are saying like money and emotions. Let's talk all about that. And so what I see some people is they're very uncomfortable looking at what do the numbers actually say. And the unintended consequences that we're only going to make decisions based on how we feel. And sometimes we actually need financial data to help inform how we can feel about things.
Absolutely. Right? I love that.
So I think what I've learned about the short answer is Western minds are conditioned to either or. And what we have to continually practice is both and. If we're a Western minded individual, we're going to say it's either this or it's that. But what we want to do is just say it's this and that, and they're interacting with each other.
They certainly, and isn't that true for all therapy, where like you go to therapy very often because there is an outcome, a behavior that you are looking to impact. And as it relates to financial therapy, the numbers is the outcome and the impact.
Absolutely. Right. And this is part of that, and this is why it's so personal, why I feel so much energy to say this is I was conditioned on numbers, right? That's how I shared the story. I've got it. The numbers say, babe, do this. And then I went into this whole therapy world and said, it's not about the numbers explicitly and implicitly. It's about the relationship, and it's the dynamics, and it's about how you feel. And okay, well, I'll pay attention to all of those things and be really good about that. But I stopped looking at the numbers. But the numbers were clearly telling me, you're over your ski tips, bud. Like if you just monitor your numbers, and this is one of the concepts I work on with people all the time, is between rigid, anxious monitoring and managing the numbers and complete chaos, not paying attention. There's this beautiful place where we can observe and notice and just be with. It's a range. It's not a point on this continuum. So when we're in that place, that's probably where we're at financial well-being.
I love it. And thank you so much. I think part of what I'm sure makes you a very good financial, emotional, all types of therapy that we're getting right now.
Yes, all the things.
Yes, is that you are sharing of yourself, and you have through this conversation so vulnerably in a way that helps you actually establish empathy with everyone who's listening to you and trying to improve themselves through your own sharing. And so incredibly grateful for that and for your reflecting on your financial story. And that's, I think, the most powerful part of our discussion. So I will speak to our listeners for a moment and ask, what beliefs have shaped the way that you approach your money? How do your emotions impact your financial decisions? What small shifts in your awareness can lead to really big changes in the numbers in your financial relationships? All right, Ed, where can listeners find more about your work and explore more about Healthy Love and Money?
.com.
HealthyLoveandMoney.com.
That's the best place to jump off. From there, what you can discover, though, is my blog, my podcast, my book, The Healthy Love and Money Way. We're on social media, so you can find it there. The website is great. And yeah, I think that would be a great place to find and connect.
Fantastic. And I think closing word here for the listeners is, what one way are you willing to look internally to change your own outcomes? That's kind of my big takeaway. I'm rewriting the closing here. It's much more about looking inside, but for the purpose of changing the numbers and the outcomes. That's what we were here talking about.
Yes.
Fantastic. Thanks, Ed.
Thanks, Marla. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us on the Knowing Me, Knowing You podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Your support helps us bring more transformative conversations to you. Until next time, keep discovering, keep growing, and remember, you're in control of your own financial story. Follow us for more conversations on financial confidence, self-discovery, and the future of money.